to chapter 9 in your math book, and this is just the table of contents so that you can kind of see what we're coming across in chapter 9. Again, you'll notice I don't teach every single lesson. I do this in the classroom too, but some of the lessons I will comment on and say, oh, do this. So we are going to skip a couple of the lessons right now. I'm actually going to teach you lessons 2 and 4 at the same time, adding and subtracting fractions. So here's your operations with fractions. The beginning of the unit is on page 553, and then you can do on your own the Am I Ready, where you can just get a little bit of fraction review. If you'd like to cut out the vocabulary card or do the foldable, those things are up to you. We're skipping lesson 1, and we're going to look at lesson 2 and lesson 4. And Mary, I'm using the letters you sent me as little bookmarks here. I hope that's okay. So what we're doing in lesson 2 is we'll be talking about adding like fractions, and then in lesson 4 we're talking about subtracting like fractions. So I'm going to have you set aside the book for right now. I'm going to teach the lesson to you, and then you're going to come back to the book and be able to do some practice. So first let's talk about adding fractions. Let's say I have 2/6 and I want to add another 1/6. I'll end up with 3/6. We could actually simplify this and make it find an equivalent fraction to 3/6. 1/2 is the same thing as 3/6. Say I'm doing some subtraction. Maybe I have 3/6 and I want to take away 1/6. I would end up with 2 of the 6ths. So it seems pretty common sense. Let's do, say I have 5/8. And I want to subtract away 3/8. Maybe 3/8 of it was used for something. I end up with 2/8. Let's do a couple on paper, and then I will just let you guys do these on your own. The reason I put these two lessons together is because they're both pretty simple lessons. They're not very complicated, as you just saw. So let's look at the guided practice on page 568. And you're just supposed to add up 1/6 plus 2/6. Here's the thing that gets complicated when you do it on paper. A lot of people like to add, well, 6 plus 6 is 12, but that's not how this works. We just discovered that when we add 6ths up, we still end up with 6ths. So 1/6 plus 2/6 is 3/6. You want to be very careful that you're not adding those up. It doesn't make 12. You are working with 6 the whole time. It's kind of like saying if I had 1 elephant plus 2 elephants, I'd still end up with 3 elephants. I wouldn't change from elephants. Well, 1/6 plus 2/6 is 3/6. I don't change it from being 6ths. Down here, 2/5 plus 2/5, you add up the numerator, the numbers on top. So you end up with 4. 4 what? Well, I've been working with 5ths the whole time. So the fact that I'm working with 5ths doesn't change. I still have 5ths. So you don't add the ones on the bottom. You're only adding the numerators, the numbers on the top. So for both of these, you can go in and see if you can simplify. And this was a lesson I taught a little while ago, but I'll just refresh your memory that for 3, you've got factors of 1 and 3. And for 6, your factors are 1, 6, and then you've got also 2 and 3. So the thing that they share that is the largest, the greatest common factor is 3. So you can divide the top and the bottom both by 3. So basically what you're doing is dividing by a version of 1 to find the simplest form. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 6 divided by 3 is 2. So just like what I showed you just a second ago, 3/6 is the same thing as 1/2. So we just wrote it in simplest form, which is what the question asked for. 4/5 is a little interesting because your factors for 4 are 1, 2, and 4, but 5 is prime, so you only have 1 and 5. So they actually don't share any factors, so 4/5 already is in its simplest form. So when you are doing the independent practice on page 569, all you need to do is add up the numerators. Remember that the denominator doesn't change, because if you're working with thirds, you're still working with thirds at the end. If you're working with fourths or twelfths, you still end up with working whatever size fraction you were working with to begin with, and then you can get a little practice putting it in simplest form. And then the same thing when you go into the subtracting lesson. Let's look at the guided practice on page 580. Same deal. If you're subtracting 6/8 minus 3/8, you're going to end up with 8ths at the end of it anyway. You're taking 8ths away from 8ths. That doesn't change. But 6 minus 3 just leaves you with 3. So you have 3/8. Same down here. 11/12 minus 5/12. If you have had 12ths this whole time and you have a whole lineup of these little 12ths, well, you can take away as many 12ths as you want, but you still are working with 12ths. 11 minus 5. So just to recap, 4th graders, the Am I Ready Math Words foldable and vocabulary cards, that is all stuff for you to do on your own, and that is optional. You don't have to necessarily do that, but all of these things are things you can do on your own before you watch me teach the lesson. The hands-on lessons are things that we aren't doing. So lesson 1 and lesson 3, hands-on means that you would need to have these little fraction tiles that I have, and since you don't have these at home, those lessons are difficult to do at home. So we skipped them, and I just taught you lesson 2 and lesson 4. So if you're trying to figure out what to work on as practice right now, you can do lesson 2 and lesson 4 along with the independent practice page and the problem solving on the back. You can use the homework pages as a review, so you might spend a couple of days doing these pages for lesson 2 and lesson 4, and then you're welcome to use the check my progress if you like, and the problem solving if you like. These again are optional ones for you to do. I'm not asking you to do those, so if you want to do those are optional. Then just jump in and do lesson 2 and lesson 4, which I just taught you. Make sure you've done the practice where you've added fractions and subtract them, and then you can do the check my progress and the problem solving if you like, and I will post how to do lesson 6 later on.